Good evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the City Council will begin in a few moments. The City Council meets on the first, second, and third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. and serves as the city's policymaking and legislative body. Each meeting is governed by Robert's Rule of Order unless those guidelines conflict with city ordinance or charter. City Council meetings offer an opportunity for citizens to speak directly to their elected representatives. Those in attendance are invited to address the Council during the public input segment at the beginning of the agenda. At that time, any issue that is not subject to formal action later in the agenda can be addressed. Testimony that concerns a resolution or an ordinance's second reading is only allowed when those specific agenda items are being addressed by the Council. When addressing the Council, citizens should speak directly into the microphones at the podium and state their names for the record after being recognized by the chair. To accommodate and respect all viewpoints, citizen comments are limited by ordinance to no more than 5 minutes each. Comments should be respectful and focused on providing new information that will benefit the Council's deliberative process. By city ordinance, all remarks must be addressed to the City Council as a body and not to any City Council member, including the mayor. The chair reserves the right to limit the number of speakers. City Council meetings are broadcast live on CityLink and online at siouxfalls.org. Information regarding the City Council, its committees, meetings, briefings, and members is available by visiting siouxfalls.org/council or by calling the Council office at 605-367-8085. Thank you for your interest in Sioux Falls City Government.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting. It is October 10th. Certainly pleased to have you here in attendance. We'll start our City Council meeting by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Kiley.
Here.
Neitzer.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Selberg.
Present.
Starr.
Here.
Staley.
Here.
Erickson. Here. Erpenbach.
Here.
Councilors, thank you very much. In Sioux Falls, we lead our meetings with an invocation. We're very, very pleased to have Pastor Kirk Flaw back to lead us in an invocation. Thank you, Pastor Kirk. He is with Abiding Savior Free Lutheran Church here in Sioux Falls. What we'd ask is that you please stand for that invocation and please remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Pastor Kirk.
Well, always a joy to come and to share, and have done this many times and have often always given thanks for your service onto our community. And it's a blessing, I think, to be able to come and be able to share an invocation. I appreciate serving in that kind of a community that we can do that. And I'll just share just a bit from the book of Romans chapter 12. It says, since we have gifts that differ according to the grace given to us, each of us is to exercise them accordingly. If service in his serving, and it goes down and it says in verse 8, and he who leads with diligence. And I would thank all of you for your servant leadership, serving with grace and with dignity and with diligence and zeal, and we appreciate that. Lord, I want to give thanks for tonight and give thanks for these servant leaders that serve our community so graciously. I pray that they would continue to serve with zeal and with wisdom and with insight. And I would pray, Lord, that our community would continue to uphold them and support them and pray for them, God. And I ask, Lord, for your mercies now upon this meeting, all the discussions thereof. And again, we give thanks for this community and the opportunity to come and to pray and to encourage one another. We ask your favor now upon this time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you guys. Great to have you back. Thank you. Yep.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Thanks so much for being here. I do have one proclamation I'd love to read. Please come forward. Thank you so much for being here. These are two folks who really make a strong difference in our community. Would you please introduce yourself to the people of our town, please?
Amy Carter with Children's Inn.
Michelle Markgraf with the Compass Center.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Michelle. I am going to read a proclamation on their behalf and so many others. The proclamation reads, whereas over 4 million women are victims of severe assault by their intimate partners annually in the United States, and nearly 1 in 4 women is likely to be abused by a partner in her lifetime. Whereas children who grow up in violent homes are abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average. Whereas in 2016, the Sioux Falls Police Department and the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office responded to a total of 1,394 domestic assault calls and 613 protection order violations. Whereas in 2015, 44% of the murders in South Dakota were a result of domestic violence. Whereas a dedicated group of citizens have been fighting domestic violence together through the Minnehaha County Family Violence Council for 35 years. Whereas wearing a purple ribbon during the month of October and attending Take Back the Night on October 12, 2017 at 6 p.m. at the Elman Center on the campus of Augustana University will show support for victims and survivors of domestic violence. Whereas the voices of victims offer us important insight into the personal pain and loss that victims of domestic violence endure, and are voices that deserve our attention, respect, and support. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2017 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Sioux Falls, and urge all citizens to become actively involved to work towards improving victim safety and holding perpetrators of domestic violence accountable for their actions against individual victims in our society as a whole. Just a round of applause, please, for these efforts. Amy, are there still tickets for the Take Back the Night?
Yes. Take Back the Night, you don't have to RSVP. You can just show up. So it's 6 p.m. on Thursday evening.
And Cindy and I will be there, and we certainly hope that everybody else will join us that night as well. 6 p.m. at the Elman Center on October 12th, Thursday night. Thank you both. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Councilors, thank you for that opportunity. And now we'll move to our consent agenda. Any motions, changes?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Rolfing.
Been a motion to approve our consent agenda. It has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Kylie,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Our regular agenda tonight, councilors, any motions, changes?
To approve, Erickson.
Second?
Been a motion to approve our regular agenda. It has been seconded as well. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Kylie.
Yes.
Nitzert.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Selberg.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Staley.
Yes.
Erickson.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
That is passed 8-0. Thank you. Folks, welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Thank you so much for being here. If there's anybody who would like to speak to the council on a topic that is of importance to them, just come forward. We would ask you keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, please. Introduce yourself by just stating your name to the people of our great town. We would ask you to address the council as a whole, or the body as a whole, with your comments. And if you could keep it professional and respectful, we'd appreciate that as well. Welcome.
Mayor, Council, Michael Christensen here again. Would like to revisit the changing of the Minnesota Avenue intersections from no turn on red to no turn on red when pedestrians are present. In lieu of the press release that came out a week or so after I was here last and spoke. We know that in recent years, the Cathedral Neighborhood Association, the Pettigrew Neighborhood Association, the All Saints Neighborhood Association, and the Hayward Neighborhood have all done things within their organizations to draw attention to the scariness of walking in the city. the concerns of traffic and walking and trying to make it safer for their neighbors to walk around their neighborhoods. I don't think it's a coincidence that those neighborhoods are adjacent to downtown Sioux Falls. In 2015, the city published its Downtown 2025 plan, and in its vision statement, it says, downtown streets will be designed as complete streets network. Our goal includes being among the top northern tier mid-sized markets for walkability. Also in 2015, the city council, approved a complete streets policy that included words, whereas the people expressed a strong desire for increased transportation options, including walking, whereas the long-range transportation plan, the sustainability plan, the Live Well 2012 Community Health Status Report all recommended increased levels of walking. In 2017, just a few weeks ago, the city released a news release, Data-Driven Decisions Make for Safe and Reliable Commutes, and announced a 65% reduction of walking at the 10th and 11th and Minnesota intersections. Instead of viewing these numbers as a possible failure of the plans and the public health and the city council policy, the city made the intersection less walkable by decreasing restrictions for right turns on red. The news release touted data. Here's some data. In the red light camera days, 6,000 vehicles per year ran red lights, and in 2010, 70% of those 6,000 were right turn on reds. We have recent unflattering data from Chris Parsley that he presented a few weeks ago to you. And we know that when the city was counting on video how many pedestrians still use this intersection, red light running was not one of the things that they bothered to count because it was technically illegal. And so I wonder how many people avoid the chaos of this intersection and stay home and don't walk downtown and enjoy downtown? Or how many pedestrians cross mid-block between 10th and 11th to avoid the intersections? I ask City Council that you revisit your complete streets policy. See if decisions, future decisions, or this decision matter to that policy. If it does, then please apply the policy. If it does not, perhaps change the policy so that more eyes and more people can review changes like this. Finally, in the news release, the final line, drivers are required to yield to pedestrians using crosswalks. As I watched the police briefing talking about the fatality at 9th and Cliff that day, the day before, the day after, I observed the officer, the spokesperson, asked directly. So it's not marked clearly, sorry, the final line. Did I say that? The final line is drivers are required to yield to pedestrians using crosswalks. The reporter asked, so it's not marked clearly as a crosswalk, you said? Would that be considered jaywalking? And the officer struggled and then deferred to the attorneys. As we're walking and biking and driving around the city, we don't have attorneys next to us to help us make those decisions. And so we need to do a better job enforcing and educating on what driving in the city means, especially if we're going to rely on words like that to make decisions about loosening restrictions in intersections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Stephen, come forward. Thank you.
Hi, Stephen Ciano. I want to complain about misrepresentation of the key points that I've been making in presenting to this body. When I read the summary, it seems to have some accuracy, but missing the real point. I recall last time I came here to complain, you people, well, I said that if I should die tomorrow, which is conceivable because of various physical ailments I have on top of my emotional disability and my social awkwardness with the Asperger's, or what might be called a logician personality. which puts me at 3%. You can look it up online, 16 personalities, the logician. It's 3% of the population. So I'm definitely a minority. And I've been discriminated against for my beliefs and for being different in general. Ever since I went and asked about the possibly working in the military. I was misled, then I was labeled homosexual, which was a death sentence back in the 70s. And I was targeted, and seeing that I was going to die, I was going to be killed, I had a breakdown. I couldn't face the world. They discharged me covering up what they had done to me. And this is just as real. A psychic injury is just as real as a physical injury. And they've been covering it up ever since. They denied me. This started in California. VA denied me access. Then in New York, they denied me access. Social Security as well denied the fact, as evidenced in my records, that I was disabled with PTSD. That was clear. And ever since then, I have suffered through the years. I and my family, my children, their mother, we've all suffered. And I've taken positions against injustice. And maybe part of the ongoing attack on me is because of that. I've defended others. I come to this city and I try to get help, physically disabled now too, and they're covering that up too. They're covering up the fact that for 40 years I've been disabled and have struggled and suffered in an effort to continue living. And I can't get medical care at the VA. They have actually terrorized me and denied me care, and then they come out and say, oh, everyone that you are dealing with is gone. No, I don't believe it. That's what the director there told me recently, the new one. The old one was in on the conspiracy. Yes, it's a conspiracy. Even if you people don't know all that went into it, all the parts of it, it's still considered a conspiracy. And Falls Community Health could have gotten the medical records and sought financial assistance as is needed for my medical care. It's certainly medically indicated, and they have failed to do so. And they instead referred it over to some city attorneys who covered it up as well. As far as I'm concerned, they should have done something. I think that this body, if you feel it's beyond you personally, because you're only city people, and I say it's down to the city level now. It's been federal, state advocacy covered it up. Health department covered up what's going on. I was falsely declared when I proved PTSD since 78, wrongly denied in 2004. I was then, by somebody outside of the VA, falsely declared delusional, and somehow this was apparently adopted by the VA. And later, when I proved more, which records I've been trying to get Falls Community Health to get hold of, local records, where it was confirmed again, PTSD disability since 78, that's the fact. Then it was,
Stephen, thank you, sir. Thank you for your service.
Now I'm being billed by this entity,
Stephen,
Falls Community Health, and this should be stopped.
Stephen, thank you, sir.
Please.
Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
It's attempted murder.
Stephen, please sit down. Thank you. Welcome, folks.
Hello, City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak before you guys. My name is Roy Scottwold. I am a member of the Verflevin Kindred. We are a non-profitable organization recognized through the federal government. And what we are is a group of individuals, men and women alike, that recognize and live by the Old Norse ways. We can say post-Viking, pre-Viking, and, the modern Viking age, but the times have carried on through ancestry. We take honors in our ancestors and the old ways and the old gods, Odin, Thor, Tyr, list goes on. The best comparison to what we believe in the culture is Native American. We're really, really close in our beliefs. Even some of our sacred symbols that we use are identical. The same with Buddhists. What we'd like to do is invite you guys to the Living Library this weekend. And that's where we will sit down and we'll explain in full what we believe in our values that we uphold to. It's a really interesting culture that we do. We observe the holidays, the seasonal changes basically, and we have fun. All the kids get involved. We have Viking games for kids and all that. Sometimes we have really good turnouts. This Living Library, I'll leave it up to her to explain to you or to let you know a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Roy.
Thank you.
Most of you know me as Boots, serving with the Center for Equality and with youth suicide prevention and other various community activities. And today I present to you myself today as Thor-Nipt Thiord Rainier, which translates to Thor's sister, waker of the people. I am an ordained vulva for my kindred, which means rune master, wise one, and magician. It is my role within my community to do my best to serve my community members by helping guide them on their path of living within the virtues of Asatru. Asatru translates to the belief in the Aesir, and the Aesir are the higher Norse gods in the pantheon. And what I want to do is go ahead and invite you to the Living Library. It is this time, we're doing the basics of belief, and we will have multiple faith-based groups being represented there. And most commonly in South Dakota, it's Christianity. So what we're doing is representing the other faces within the community. We have Druid, we have an Oglala Lakota practitioner, we also have a Muslim, and we have a polytheist, we have a Wiccan, and many other faiths as well. And what we want to do is invite all of the people of the community, whether you have a belief in faith or believe in practicality and science, to come and learn about each other so that we are not divided by our beliefs, but united by our diversity. So please join us from 2 to 4 p.m. at Queen City Bakery for Basics in Belief. And as we say in Asatru, hail.
Oh, thank you.
Roy, thank you. Boots, thank you. We appreciate it. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
I do have 2 photos. I don't know if I can get a little help with that. My name is Chris Parsley. I am president of Falls Area Bicyclists. We're a nonprofit bicycle advocacy organization. I'm also certified by the League of American Bicyclists as a cycling instructor. I'm here speaking on behalf of the bicycling community in Sioux Falls. I spoke to this group about a month ago about the changes made to the signage at 10th and Minnesota Avenue relating to turning right on red. I filmed drivers turning right for 1 hour. What the video showed was a recipe for disaster. One point I made was that one has to imagine that that isn't isolated to just that one intersection. Shortly after that, a press release was issued. Public Works Director Mark Cotter was listed as the contact person. In this release, it stated, and I quote, "Key data points used to inform the decision to make changes at the 10th, 11th Street, and Minnesota Avenue intersections was that the no turn on red when pedestrians present signs have been effective and safe at other locations in the city, such as 26th and Discovery." So I went to 26th and Discovery with my camera. I filmed for 1 hour. I was able to capture all right turning motorists, except for those that were headed west onto 26th from Discovery. During this hour, I counted 15 children on bicycles and 19 pedestrians. 15 of those pedestrians were also children. 23 motorists turned right on red. 9 of those turned right on red while pedestrians were present. 14 of the 23 that turned right on red did not come to a complete stop before turning right. One motorist, shown in this photo here, even turned left on a red light. And I believe she had her phone in her hand while she was doing so. 39% of the right on red turning motorists did so when pedestrians were present. Is this what the city considers effective and safe? The official ruling by the Federal Highway Administration says that the use of when pedestrians are present signs is not encouraged. The meaning is vague, and there is an inherent lack of clearly defined criteria for enforcement. A study by the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety found that the signs prohibiting right turns on red during specific hours were very effective in terms of driver compliance. But signs that give drivers the discretion to turn right on red based on whether pedestrians are present were not effective because the vague message makes enforcement difficult. So I went online and I looked at the manual on uniform traffic control devices for streets and highways. It's the official manual that lists every sign that we use on the roadways. There is not a sign in that document with the legend, no turn on right when pedestrians are present, no turn on red when pedestrians are present. So I asked this city council to do one of the following. Change the yellow pedestrian signs to ones with a flashing yellow or white LED around the edge. A quick internet search found this particular sign. It conforms to the specifications for the Federal Highway Administration set forth in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and you can get it for less than $2,000. These signs are solar powered and are wirelessly triggered by the button. So when a pedestrian pushes the button, these lights flash. Or take down all the when pedestrians present signage and prohibit turning right on red at any intersection that currently has the when pedestrians present signage. Or replace all of those signs with signs prohibiting right turns on red during specific hours when higher numbers of pedestrians are expected, such as when kids are walking to and from school and when people are likely to be walking to and from work. Thank you for your time today, and I can be available anytime if anyone's interested in any further discussion.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Folks, anybody else? Welcome.
Tim Stanga. I just want to address a few issues that people ask me as I'm out and about. For one, the mayor tells the public people to respect you guys as a whole. And people ask me, well, since the mayor tells you guys to respect you guys as a whole, why doesn't he tell the city council to do the same thing with their fellow councilors? I wish that would happen because sometimes one gets picked on, the other one doesn't. The other question is on the event center. People are starting to realize that the siding that's on there now is not the original siding that was supposed to be put on, but it's an alternative. And they trying to figure out how do you bend metal around a wall when it's straight. I can't answer the question because I can't bend metal. But they want to know who signed off on the siding, and they want to know after it got half done and realizing that the siding wasn't working out and we kept putting extra clips and extra this and extra that to hold the siding on, why did we keep doing it? And I told them, I said, that's not for me to answer because one, I seen it as it was going on. I did address it with a couple of the city councilors at the time. They did go down and look at it and they said the same thing I did. It's not right. But the thing is, once you sign off on a product, you have the product. If you got $1 million worth of product sitting there, you can't say, well, sorry, it's not working, send it back. You can't do that. Because most people know when they have to order something, they sign for it, they either pay half down or they pay the full amount, and they're stuck with the product. I guess the thing is there's a lot of questions that should be asked, aren't being asked, and aren't being answered. And I guess the thing is people would just like to hear the truth on why the siding was still put on why the siding, since we found out it wasn't working to begin with, why it wasn't stopped, why it wasn't tore off, and why we didn't put on something different. The only thing I can think of is either somebody, I know somebody signed off on the product. Somebody either had to sign off on after it was being put on and realize that we have the product bought, we got to use it, and somebody signed off on it. Because normally if something's done wrong, the contractor will come in and bend over backwards to fix the problem. And I'm hoping that we can get some answers and be able to understand more about what really went on with the siding. Thank you.
You're welcome, Tim. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Sarah Bruce, Sioux Falls. I really didn't want to come here today, but as we know, we have rising crime on the streets here. Been dealing with problematic neighborhoods, nuisance, going to the city attorney with charges of abatement processes here. Got a hold of some neighbors, and I think the communication, we call in the police department and health department and a crime-free property with Kyle Johnson is not the answer here. We're going to go on a ride-along with Teresa and Pat's store here, and I'm going to take them through the gangs and take them through the roof fights, stabbings, throwing people through a window, human feces. I'm not going to mention the names, but it's in all districts. I encourage the neighborhood. I am working with the police department on these issues. Police department will have time to address these issues. We will make arrests with these issues, and we will do no trespassing. The public doesn't know how to get a hold of Officer Kyle Johnson, a crime-free property, so you can get a hold of him at 978-6866. When you see code violations, broken windows, graffiti, you call Matt Tobias. Matt Tobias said he would do anything to get a hold of these problems and correct the issue. Speaking to these people in these neighborhoods, I think that they have called when Matt Tobias and Officer Kyle Johnson, before they got into this position. After Kyle Johnson and Matt Tobias got in their position, they quit calling. I'm letting you know now here because it's going to make the news. We need to make the news here. Because when people don't see stuff on the news, we don't think that there's no crime here, okay? From prostitution to gangbanging to domestics, to problematic neighborhoods that are crime-free properties here that has turned into the projects. So Matt Tobias' number is 367-1896. I urge people, if you see broken windows and graffiti, abandoned cars in the neighborhood, give him a call. This would deter the crime in problematic neighborhoods. We are facing one landlord that was steering. And if you're a broker, real estate, or a landlord, you know what steering is. He was convicted on that. That will also become out in the paper for steering. So we do have issues here in this neighborhoods. Central Side to the west side, Pat's district, Great Knights district, and Marshall's district here. So I want to thank Teresa and Pat jumping on board this Friday with the Argus leader and be right on the side of us when the police is called on these problematic neighborhoods and what the police are telling the citizens. I'm right on it. And the police, I have to cross my boundaries here a little bit when the police tell the citizens we don't have time from 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. to write tickets or make an arrest. So we just hope that a new mayor comes in and tackles this crime the best that they can and change this police organization, and this is what I'm pushing. Y'all all know that I'm pushing for a new chief of police. So this is starting the process before the new mayor comes in. So we're going to bring this to the light starting Friday. For about 3 weeks we're going to do this because we have severe problems in the neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. Today I want to talk about corruption in government and precedent, something that South Dakotans have been putting up with over the last couple of years, way too much. First we had EB5. Nothing happened. Huge scandal. Guy supposedly shot himself with a 5-foot branch in the stomach. Pretty bad way to go if you're going to kill yourself. Nothing happened. Guy got a $5,000 fine and walked off. Precedents. Gear up. More precedents. Whole family murdered, house burned down. USD senior political science class has predicted $62 million just disappeared in the Gear Up program. GOAC has met several times and they kind of said, oh, can't do anything about it. Precedent. Another scandal, just did well. Last mayor, he, before this one, signed off on a 100% cost overrun on Phillips to the Falls without approval from the council, against the charter, which means it's against the law. One of the councilors was going to file charges, never did. Chickened out. Mayor runs for a second term and wins. Precedents. Now we're here today, siding settlement. We were lied to. We were not only lied to by elected officials, but we were lied to by public appointed officials. Are we going to let this go? Are we going to go just with all the rest of these scandals and set more precedent? Because see, what happens is when we allow people to get away with corruption like this, they just keep getting worse and worse, and the precedent gets getting set higher and higher till it comes to the point where it's normal. It's normal for politicians to lie to us. It's normal for politicians to take money from us. It's normal, just normal. The media and the citizens only have so much power to do anything about this. I hope this council stands up, and I don't care if there's 7 months left in this administration or 7 days, and does something about this. I could care less about the settlement or the money or some engineer's report that somehow has just disappeared into the night. You guys need to take a stand and say no more precedent in this city or this state when people are being corrupt and when people are lying to us. This isn't your money. This is our money. I don't understand how we can't get that through our thick skulls. You can't take our money and spend it secretly and then lie about it later. That's not how it works. If you want to go that, you can go to some Middle East country and be a part of some dictatorship. Leave our country, get the heck out of here. I don't want you here. But in a democracy, that's not how it works. And I hope, and I've encouraged several counselors, you need to put your foot down on this one, and there needs to be a punishment and precedent on this. And I mean it. It's blatantly obvious if you watched any of the media reports, read the settlement, watched this in any way, shape, or form, that corruption exists. You'd have to be completely blind not to see it. Please, do something.
Folks, is there anybody else who wanted to engage the council? Item number 6, please.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 111, restrictions on issuance of malt beverage retailer licenses.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Neisert.
We did a presentation at first reading, so I'm just going to hit on a couple of main points tonight. This is a continuation of the changes that were made a year ago to address public access between licensed premises. Now that we've lived it for a year, we've seen the good as well as a few of the unintended consequences. This makes a few improvements. Mainly, we're addressing employee safety as well as unnecessary burden and cost on small business. 2 licensed establishments in the same building will now be allowed to have an employee-only access between the 2 premises as long as it is in a non-public area, like a back room, and alcohol is not stored in that room. Public access and openings remain prohibited. 2 establishments in the same building will be allowed to share a common refrigeration unit as long as alcohol can't pass between the 2 premises. Finally, we're allowing an enclosed common access area rather than entries that are outside. A common access area cannot be part of a licensed premises, which means alcohol is not allowed in that area. For example, a breezeway where you could access the 2 doors to the licensed premises, which are right now outside. This will allow a business to secure the common area so that an employee could go between the 2 premises without going outside. And I would encourage your support. Thank you.
Councilor, thank you, folks. Before I go to the council, I wanted to come to you. Did anybody want to speak to this particular item? Welcome.
Got one question on this one. I've talked to a few.
Tim, could you just introduce yourself,
Tim
please?
Stenga.
Thank you.
Talked to a few people that work at these casinos. I guess the thing is the city council at the time when they did this didn't realize that you got 2 businesses, you'd have 2 employees. A lot of these have 1 employee. So why does this 1 employee have to go outside from one to the other? It's because you guys didn't realize that you guys figured that there would be 2 employees. There's only 1 employee at a lot of these. So what they want to do is have you guys change it for their benefit to be able to go from one bar to the other and not have them go outside. I think it should be changed to where you have 1 employee per bar. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Did anybody else want to engage the council?
Scott Ersman, Sioux Falls. I think anything you can do as a legislative body in this city to limit video lottery is fantastic. It's a scourge on our society. It costs us more as taxpayers than what we get out of it. I watched the Planning Commission last week. They approved another casino. So stupid. The neighborhood showed up and said, we don't want it here. We already have enough crime problems. They're a magnet for crime. That's all they are. They're a robbery magnet. I had one in my neighborhood. Got robbed once or twice a month. As soon as it closed, bar moved in there. I don't think that bar has ever been robbed. Why? Because it's not a casino. That's all they are. And making it easier for them to operate these businesses shouldn't be done. Now, I understand the state regulates the licenses, which is baloney. I think the municipalities should have some right to do that. But anything you can do to limit video lottery and to eventually see it go bye-bye would be great.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic? Councilors? Councilor Erpenbach?
Question for sort of this, I guess we don't really have sponsors, but the folks who've kind of led this charge. One of the reasons that I did vote for that initial split was because of that exact thing that the gentlemen are talking about. What we're allowing is to take one building, split it in half. I can have double the number of video lottery machines because I have 2 liquor licenses. And to me, putting that barrier in there and hopefully requiring, I realize we didn't require it, but hopefully requiring them to have at least 1 employee per bar was advantageous in my mind. I'd like to understand what the thought process is about this. This allows it to be much easier. Again, all I'm doing is I got to put a chain link fence in there and I've got 2 bars. So can you guys talk about that for me?
Councilor Erickson?
Yeah, I'll attempt some of it as well. So the issue behind it is it's not just a chain link fence, it's to share the refrigeration. So, we refer to it as a chain link fence. Generally, it'd be higher up. You cannot pass any alcohol through. What's really restricted in state law is to not have the alcohol pass through one way or another. When we originally started this conversation, it was viewed as being a pod, so to speak, and, I think I made a smart aleck response is, what are you going to do, put duct tape on the floor so you can't walk back and forth? We're not doing that. They're still required required to have bathrooms on both sides. One can only be open during certain times because of the way that liquor law is restricted as far as who can be open on Christmas Day and who cannot. And so they have restrooms on both sides of these facilities. This is to share the refrigeration. It's not mandatory. Oftentimes, some casinos have the storage coolers where they might be locked or things of that nature, and they might not do this. This is just an avenue in which they can do that, and an avenue that they can have a safe locked behind there, and that only would allow the employee to move back and forth. Now, the way also that it works is that legislatively, they are not required to have an employee on both sides. It's written in state law, the administrative ruling, and where it's done. And I just want to be very careful that we are not regulating casinos. We are regulating malt beverage retailer licenses, which happens to include casinos because they get the license. But this impacts them as a whole. And part of this due diligence that Greg and I talked about is we talked to many different casino owners, some that own other places in the state that have different laws and regulations than Sioux Falls. And we talked to restaurants, we talked to restaurant bars, we talked to many different areas that this would impact, to making sure that they understand kind of how this would be done. And so it makes it so they can share, but they do not have to share. And it really made sure that there was 2 specific separations between the 2 buildings, because you can only have 10 machines, I believe it is, on both sides. And so based on state law, you can only have that, and so they have to have that divider through there. Now, some other places are doing it where you have a pod, and there's a bar pod, and there's an imaginary line through some of those, and we're not asking for that. We're asking for the back room to have the safe and to keep that available for there, as well as sharing ventilation system for coolers. Councilor Neitzert might have more to add.
Before I go to Councilor Neitzert, anybody else want to engage on this topic? Councilor Staley?
How many businesses right now would be affected by this?
Anyone who, sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I answer that?
Thank you.
Anyone who has a malt beverage retailer license.
Well, I mean, that actually right now are having this side-by-side situation. This is affecting a lot. Okay. And then have you heard any pushback from anyone on this?
I have not. We did have some unintended consequences with the way that it's really unique on how state law works. Councilor Neitzert can chime in as well, but you have to have beer or alcohol if you have video lottery. What state law says, but you can't smoke during them either unless you're outside. And so there's a lot of these rules that go back and forth. And so when we did the original change, which I was the sponsor of, Dean Karski and myself brought forward, there are some buildings that per our building code, you have to go in this door and you have to go in this door, but you have to have 10 machines, but you have to go out this door. It's really confusing. And there's actually a business in town right now that the way that it's set up, you have to have 10 machines in each one. You have to have alcohol or beer on each side, but you can't get to the door through it. It's very confusing. I haven't seen it yet, but there's issues with it, and there's issues with unintended consequences from the way that we did it the last time. And so this is trying to make it a little more clear, and also with the state in mind as well, to making sure that this is mindful of the state laws that are in effect as well.
Councilor Neitzert, could you help with this one?
Sure.
Thank you.
There are a number of establishments. Most of them would be video lottery establishments. A letter went out that we had Jamie and Licensing sent out to all liquor establishments, and I did field a number of calls. Most of them, once it was explained, were either found that this will never apply to me because I'm never going to do a side-by-side thing, or they had no problems with it. We wanted to be really careful to make sure to reach out to everybody to make sure that there wouldn't be any unintended consequences, or if there's something that we weren't thinking of, and that it was going to work for everybody. To address a couple other things, as you know, state law preempts, so they have pretty much exclusive domain over video lottery. I appreciate the any moral objection to video lottery. I have some myself, but it is state law and it's here. As far as the concern that was raised by Councilor Erpenbach about the fence, I do want to point out that I think all of us maybe had a bit of a sense that maybe there'd be a chain link fence all the way through in an establishment or something like that, and that was never going to be the case. Even with this change, there still has to be a solid wall anywhere that the public is. The only place that you could do some sort of a fence or air passageway would be in the cooler, which is not publicly accessible. You couldn't do a chain link fence all the way down. It still has to be a solid wall for the customers, and the only other exception would be that door in the back room. And I think that's probably everything. So if anybody else has any questions, I'd be happy to handle those.
Thank you, Councilor Neitzer. Councilor Rolfe?
I thank you for all the information, the work that you guys have done on this. My biggest concern, not biggest concern, but the one thing that we've talked about all along is that these are two separate businesses. They will have to have an employee on one side and another employee on another to make it run. So, and tell me why, because they're going to leave the cash register and everything free on one side?
Okay, that's the other thing I wanted to cover. State law and administrative rule covers this, and they preempt over that, and they say as long as you can have, and they define what it is, as long as you have adequate surveillance of the other establishment, you do not have to have an employee in that other side. I think it's maybe a little nutty, but with or without this change, they can continue to do that. The only thing this change does is it then now allows, if they're going to have one employee, that they will be able to safely proceed from one side to the other, either through a back room or through a closed vestibule, rather than a lady, for example, working there having to walk outside at night to go between one or the other. So with or without this, they can do that. That is state law, whether we like it or not.
Council Chair Kiley?
Well, I have the same concerns that we heard this evening, and that I've heard some of my colleagues express too, about the one employee for two separate businesses. But I do understand that that's out of our area of jurisdiction within the city, that's controlled, my understanding, by state law. Therefore, I will support this, but I do have concerns over the single employee in two separate businesses from the standpoint of monitoring consumption of alcohol. And I don't know if there's a basis, if this has been a problem area, so maybe it's not reflected in the statistics, but it is still something that I do believe that there's some liability there. But I will support this particular measure this evening, but I do have concerns over one employee for two businesses. That's something that hopefully can be addressed at the state level.
Thank you. Councilor Erickson or Councilor Neitzer, would you want to make a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Councilor Erpenbach?
I just would comment that I'm not going to support this. When you talk about our original move a year ago, that there were unintended consequences that went with this, I fully intended those consequences to happen. I really want it to be more difficult, because all I have to do is own one building, put a wall in the middle, and I get 30 machines because I have two businesses now. Magically, I've created two businesses. And the best example is one that's opening right now, right about 30th or so in Minnesota on the east side of the street. 30 machines, big sign, 30 machines. This is not about whether I can drink there or not. It is about how many machines can I have there. It is about video lottery, and it is us making a statement about what we believe is right and what we believe is wrong in this community. This is one of our few opportunities to have any control over that. I'm voting no.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Kiley?
Yes.
Neitzer?
Yes.
Rolfing?
No.
Selberg?
Yes.
Starr?
No.
Staley?
No.
Erickson?
Yes.
Erpenbach?
No.
Mayor votes no. It's failed 4-5. Council, any other comments?
Move to adjourn?
Then a motion to adjourn has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Sioux Falls. Make it a great night.